Hi, good afternoon. I want to thank everyone for joining us today. My name is Damon Scott. I'm the Marketing Director here at PVBS. And today we're going to have an introduction to the Microsoft Dynamics NAV for Government Contractors. We're going to just do a quick overview of the system, the Microsoft Dynamics NAV for Government Contractors, which is a fully integrated business management solutions. So today's presentation will include a look at the executive dashboards, a fully integrated web time and expense system, the project setup, which will include the billing setup and managing funding, invoicing and invoice formats, and managing indirect rates. And hopefully we can get that done all within 1 hour. Some housekeeping things I want to let you know about. The webinar is being recorded, and it will be posted to our YouTube account, which is PVBS Dynamics NAV, later today. Again, that's a YouTube account. It's PVBS Dynamics NAV. And that'll be posted later today. If you have any questions as we're going through the webinar, please post those into the question section, and we'll try to get to those as we go along. Obviously, if time lets us, we will get some questions at the end as well. If we're not able to get to your questions, we'll contact you separately and certainly make sure that we answer any questions that you have. Also, later today, you should receive an email invitation to take a post-webinar survey. We really appreciate any feedback that you could provide. We want to make this a better learning tool for everyone. So please take a few minutes and answer some questions for us. We really do appreciate that. Okay, so today's agenda for the webinar, again, includes a brief introduction about PVBS. Then we're going to jump right into a demonstration of the product. Again, we try to get this done in an hour. We want to fit as much in as we can. So again, as we're going through this, if you see some things and you have some questions, post those into the question section, and we will try to get to those as we go along. Okay. So a little bit about PVBS. We are a top-tier Microsoft Business Solutions partner serving only the government contracting market. Our headquarters are just outside of Washington, D.C. in Reston, Virginia. It gives us a unique access and insight into the GovCon community. Also, as an experienced leader with over 14 years of success in the government contracting market and an intelligent innovator with Microsoft systems, PVBS is a direct resource to both government contractors and the Microsoft community. A little bit about Microsoft Dynamics NAV for Government Contractors from PVBS is a rich, robust accounting solution compliant with federal rules and regulations, and provides a complete integration and ease of use. And obviously we're going to go through a lot of that, and we'll show you today. So also PVBS, we're driven to develop excellence, providing the most comprehensive solutions to our customers and our partnership channel. So again, we do like any feedback you can provide, any questions that you have, and we'll certainly get to those. So with that, it's my pleasure to turn this over to Mr. Paul Scripsey, our VP of Sales and Marketing here at PVBS. And Paul, I'll let you take it over from here.
All right, thanks, Damon. I guess that was a little bit of a tongue twister around lunchtime. So before I hop into a little bit about myself, I just want to add to some of the things that Damon mentioned about Dynamics NAV. So as a solution, we're focused on mid-market, small and mid-market government contractors. And kind of how we classify that and how Microsoft does is really companies that are, from the emerging state, 50 or so employees up to several thousand. We've got clients that have 5,000 to 8,000 employees, so pretty a wide range of businesses. And the last line on here, I think, is the one that is also a big differentiator. So it's not is it just a scalable solution that meets the needs of the emerging company and also large company, but also it's for companies that do more than just provide services to the federal government. So we have clients that also resell products or manufacture goods for the government. So something that's a little bit unique. My background is in process reengineering and enterprise systems. I've been doing that for, I guess, a little over 25 years now. So this picture is probably a couple years old. I got a few more gray hairs since then. So I'm excited to present for you guys today. I think what we're doing with Microsoft is really starting to take shape. We've been focused on the marketplace for about 13 years, and in the next 2 months, we're going to have some really exciting announcements. So I'm not going to let you know what they are today, but we will communicate with you about some of the cloud-first initiatives with Microsoft and also the new release of Microsoft Dynamics NAV. So the solution today is in use This slide says 110,000. The latest number that I just received was over 120,000 companies worldwide are customers using Dynamics NAV, making it the most widely used small mid-market business software in the world. And I've been fortunate enough to work with it since the late 90s, so I've been working with the product for quite a long time. There's 4,000 partners like PVBS throughout the world, and Microsoft's model is really that they want partners to focus on vertical markets, and we took that initiative before Microsoft even felt that, hey, this is imperative that partners do that. So again, we've been doing that for about 13 years now, focused on, in this case, government contractors. This is a slide that Microsoft presents, I should say, to really articulate their vertical strategy. And the idea is that Microsoft Dynamics can fit the needs of a lot of businesses, but really partners, they take it the last mile through either improved reporting and workflow or industry knowledge in terms of how to set it up. And that's what we've done, is we've built some IP inside of Dynamics NAV that really makes it an incredible solution for a government contractor, and what I feel is the best solution for those mid-market businesses that are providing products and services to the federal government. All right, this is a little bit about the roadmap, and today we're showing NAV 15. This gives you a little insight into that from 2009 through 2015, what's happened. And in the next, I would say, 30 days will be our release of NAV 2016. We've got two major businesses right now that are going through the process to either upgrade to it or implement it. So one is about $1 billion product company in the Washington, D.C. area, and the other is about a almost 5,000 person services company in the Washington, D.C. area. So with NAV 2015, the big things that were changes and exciting for us was, improved cash management, the full tablet experience, Microsoft simplifying and making the interface easier to use, and really leveraging that one Microsoft story, how it seamlessly works with Office 365, the ability to manage documents, and then also Power BI, which is Microsoft's new business intelligence solution that's built inside of Office 365. With NAV 2016, the improvements are around workflow. We see a lot of companies that are interested in building their own workflows and being able to direct workloads towards certain employees. So we'll show with that next version those workflow capabilities, improved document management, and also OCR. So for those not familiar, that's optical character recognition. And what that is able to do is if you have heavy purchasing requirements and you receive an invoice from your vendor in either a JPEG or a PDF file, the system can actually read that document and fill in a purchase order for you. So just think about it. How much time is spent rekeying information? The system is all fully integrated. This is the next step where we can actually take data that might not be in a usable format, convert it to that format, so then it can be, in essence, reused. Improved e-services, and then streamlined interface across all clients. And when we talk about all clients, that's where this box that says Windows comes into play. So today I'm going to show information regarding desktop and web client, but Microsoft with 2015 introduced the tablet client, and now with 2016 there's the phone client. And I actually got a preview last week of the new time and expense solution that we've put on Microsoft's phone client. So working on both an Android and an Apple iOS. So not just Microsoft, this works on all of the major players from a phone perspective. So just think, if you got people in the field that don't have the ability to get to a PC, imagine them being able to access data and also enter time and expense data via their phone. So really in a more collaborative, connected world, these are things that clients are telling us they're imperative. Microsoft's delivering on that vision there. And then, we're going to show some stuff in our next month's webinar on how it works with Office 365. So it's going to be a focus on the next webinar. Some of the capabilities with Office 365, including Power BI, how it leverages SharePoint in that Office 365 suite, and also that standard integration with Excel. So some really exciting things coming down the road, but I think even what we have today is incredibly exciting because there's some things that what we offer with Microsoft, there's nobody in the marketplace that can offer the kind of solution and the technology that we can through Microsoft and PVBS. So I'm excited to get to the presentation.
Absolutely, great. You want to, while you're pulling that up, I'll go ahead and throw out a quick poll for everyone who's on the line.
Oh yeah, that sounds great.
Yeah, one of the things that we always talk about, again, we're talking about the Microsoft product here that we've helped for government contractors. So a quick poll here is, what accounting solution does your company currently operate? It's great to know what we're comparing against. It looks like a lot of folks here, Deltek GCS Premier, some QuickBooks, some on CostPoint, some on some other things as well. I'll give it a few more seconds here while Paul loads up the demonstration.
Okay.
Close this out.
Yeah, it looks like we've got 75% voting so far. So who hasn't voted, you'll be kicked off the webinar in just 3 minutes. No, I'm just kidding. We won't do that. But we've got it looks like almost 50% are users of Deltek today. Surprisingly, we got 30. A little over 30% of other. So not sure what those are, but it would be great to find out. But all right, I think we got the majority in there. But we got a lot of Deltek users and a little less than 20% of QuickBooks. So, and that is, I would say, probably pretty typical, like you said, Damon. And when we look at the companies that we've migrated, it probably is around that. We've migrated, we're coming up on 100 companies that we've migrated off of Deltek. So I'm going to go ahead and hop into things, and let's show you a little bit about what is Microsoft Dynamics NAV and how does it work. And one of the things that I'm going to do first is I'm going to touch on, I'm in the interface, and they call it a role-tailored client. And the idea here is, based on your role, the home page is designed a certain way. And I'm logged in as an accounting manager, so what I'm seeing are, in the right-hand side of my screen are activities that I'm responsible for performing or overseeing, so things like expense reports that need to get reviewed by accounting. There's one of them. I can drill into that, and within that stack, here's the one expense report for Carl. He traveled to California. It's been approved, but it hasn't been transferred over to AP for processing yet. If I want to know more information about that expense report, I could look at all details of who approved it and when they approved it. I could see that it was, looks like it was actually approved last year. I guess we're slow paying this employee. I can also see attachments. So these would be any type of receipts that got attached to that expense report. If I actually wanted to pull up the expense report to see all the details, I just double-click it. And from here, I can see everything from, the project that it was charged to, the type of expense, what the amount was. All of that is right here available to me. On any one of these pages, as a user, I can tailor that. So, for instance, you saw some fields over here regarding currency. So my organization and my demo system will pretend that, we only deal in US dollars. I don't want to see those fields. I can actually easily hide them. And now it's particular to my role. So the solution for an end user can easily be configured to the way the information you want to see. If I go back to that Role Center home page, you also see some graphical information. So in this case, I'm saying, what is my bank balance? But Microsoft's got about, I'd say about 15 to 20 different standard charts that are available. So information about sales data, purchasing data, etc., banking data, that can be placed on someone's home page, information relevant to their role. The bottom panel is integration with Outlook, so it doesn't replace Outlook, but it's available for someone to view. And then over on the right-hand side, you can see reports that are scheduled, notifications that are available, and also inbox. And I can see one of my reports that says that this report status says that it errored out. Not exactly sure why, but let me go ahead and open it up. And the thing I can see is that it was supposed to process yesterday, it was scheduled for 7:25, and for some reason it didn't process. So I'm going to go ahead and take this report and let's schedule it for a day out in the future. So I can come in and actually say, all right, I want this to be processed on Friday. I can identify the start time and also the end time for processing. And then once I just say, whoops, expiration date must be before, so let me go ahead and pick a time before. And then we'll say OK. And now I've just, we'll go ahead and refresh this. Now I just scheduled that report for processing. So I can run a report at any time, but I can also schedule it. And in addition to scheduling the report, I can tell the system when I do schedule the report, I can schedule it for actually printing to a printer. So I can pick the printer that's going to go to, or I can say, you know what, just process this as a PDF file or Excel file and have it show up in my inbox here. In addition to running it one time, I could also say this is a recurring report, run this every Monday. So that AR history by project, I want to run it every Monday. And I can also set a report filter and say, hey, show this report to me wherever I'm the PM, because those are the ones I'm responsible for. So it's making it easier for users to schedule reports and have them be specific to their role. Top right-hand corner, this says My Jobs. So in my demo system, if I go to my list of all jobs, I've got probably 50, 60 different jobs in here. But on my home page, here's the 4 that are most important to me. And what that allows me to do, and I can add and remove them as I need to, but I can just double-click, and it launches that job screen. So now I can quickly get information. I don't need to run the project status report in this case to know information about contract, funded value, revenue, etc. It's all available to me as a real-time measure on this particular record. So if I wanted to know, in this case, AR balance, $8,000, I want to know more details about that $8,000. If you have a report, not do that. But with this online reporting, I can drill into it and see in this case that that $8,000 of AR comes from these 5 invoices. If I wanted to know more details about any invoice, I could just select the line. So in this case, it's looking at invoice number 68. I hit Show Posted Document. This shows me what was the original document that created that AR. In this case, this was an invoice that we sent to the customer. Maybe I want to reprint it. I can go ahead and print it right here, hit the preview button, and this is going to pull up the invoice for me. In addition to printing it, and I'll print some stuff later for you, I could also email it. So maybe, Damon, he didn't receive that invoice. He says, hey, Paul, email it over to me. I'll get the payment done right away. I can go ahead and pull up that email, type in Damon's name here, send it off to him, or I could put a message or edit it in Outlook if I wanted to. So quickly find information and make it actionable. So it's not just pulling up the record. I can reprint it. I can email it right from here. In addition, I can see anything related to that document. So in this case, when we post that invoice, it created that $1,600 of AR. Remaining amount of $672, if I drill into that, it shows me everything related to it. In this case, we applied $1,000. So Damon, he already sent $1,000 to us. I'm not sure why we didn't get the rest. Maybe that's why I'm going to send it to him, right?
I need a pay raise, that's why.
There you go. There you go. So if I look at the actual entry, that $1,000 that got applied, it shows me all the details of that application. In this case, we put something into our bank account, hit the customer ledger, 2 entries to the general ledger. And I can actually pull up those details too. In this case, showing that it went to our Bank of America bank account. Open means we didn't reconcile that bank account yet. So just some basic thing from the home page, but you can see how easy and quickly I can get to information. The other thing that you see on the home page is, on my home page, I've got a list of, we'll call these master records that I can get to. So earlier I clicked on that jobs link. So when I was in jobs, it's showing me all the information about every job in the company. If I wanted to see maybe certain types of jobs. So I go over to the right, and we'll talk later about the hierarchy in here, but the job is, think about it as a delivery order or task order. And then underneath the job, you can have multiple subtasks or WBSs. Well, within the job can be associated to a certain contract. So here's some of the fields on the job. You know, this is the city where the work's being performed, the prime contract number, project manager, type of job, client, etc. So, and if you remembered earlier, if I just right-click on the header, I could pick other columns that I might be interested in. But anytime I've got a list, I can set a filter on this. So if I wanted to see all jobs where the primary contract number was this W9 number, I can say I want to filter to that value. So here's the list of work that we're performing under that contract vehicle. And if I want to take and save that, so maybe I'm a program manager and I manage this contract, well, here's the 3 jobs or tasks, but we're always competing for more work. So I'm going to save this and say that this is something that I always want to have a view of. So I'll just save view as. And we're going to call this contract-W9. And once I say OK, what's going to happen is over on that left-hand side, I have a filter. And now here's my contract W9. So if Damon added a new job that leveraged that contract vehicle, now it's on my list. So it's great that I've got this list of contracts, but maybe I want to turn it into information. So now I click Show as Chart, and I can do things like saying, you know, let's see how much is funded on all those tasks that were issued. So I'm showing funding and contract value. And then down in the bottom section, I'm showing it in this case by type of client. But instead of type of client, maybe I want to look at it by, I just hit job group. I don't want job group. I want to look at it by type of contract. So we're going to go to job contract type. Let's go ahead and hit J. So you can see that the work being performed under that vehicle, it's mainly T&M. I've got some T&M and also CPFF work. Maybe I wanted to know even more details. So I can see that it's CPF and T&M, and if I look at the funded value by job contract type, let's add another dimension in here, and maybe I want to look at it by type of client, because that was one of the fields we had before. So now when I look at this, I could see that, okay, when I look at the work that's federal, that federal work it's all T&M. You know, and then I've got some work over here that's state government that's T&M, and I've got something that's unclassified that's CPFF. So I've taken information, and now I've created some pretty rich graphics on it. I could also take this and save this view as something. So this is like a chart, and we'll call it chart W9. And now if I save that, now the way that I charted that is now available to me. So it's not going to be just about entering information today. It's going to be also about how I access information. All right, so that was a little bit about the home page and some of the things that I can do with it. When I go to the department list, this gives you an idea of the breadth of the system. So not every client is going to use all the modules, but here are all the different modules available to the users of Microsoft Dynamics NAV. So everything from financial management, all these things are fully integrated, all these modules and submodules. So GL, cash management, managing your cash flow, I'm guessing that's important to a lot of growing businesses out there. Receivables, payables, and fixed assets, sales order processing, purchase order management. For companies that have products, you can also have warehousing and manufacturing and project accounting, product contracts for companies that sell products, resource planning, HR and payroll if needed, but we also integrate with the standard payroll providers like ADP, Paychex, and payroll networks. So we'll also, so that's kind of giving you a little picture of some of the things inside the system. And then we'll also today go into some of the elements of entering timesheets, expense reports, approval of those documents. We won't touch on purchase requisitions, but there's also a purchase requisition process. So it's going to cover that full workflow for a business. From a reporting perspective, every module has a set of reports. You can also build your own reports, and it's using a standard report writer called Microsoft SQL Reporting Services, or SRS, Microsoft SRS. So all these are canned reports. Like we mentioned earlier, any report can be scheduled. Any report can be exported to any of those formats. In this case, if I'm looking at, I'm saying I'm going to run this report. Actually, let's look at it by contract. And I can set filters on certain jobs. This is going to be our job revenue summary report. I'll look at it for a certain period. Go ahead and preview it. And now it's showing me details about by contract. So go ahead and make this a little bit bigger, and let's see if we can find that contract vehicle that we were talking about earlier. So it's a blank contract. There's our U.S. test contract. Go ahead and go to the second page. See if we can, and here is that contract we talked about, the W-9 one. So here's all the jobs that are underneath that vehicle, and also details about any of the subtasks. And you're seeing information about current period, year-to-date, inception-to-date data, and all the way to the right, we've got our percent complete and funded backlog. So really giving us details, at any of these levels, by contract, by job, by task, and I can also set filters within that. So a lot of different reports inside the system. Stay tuned for next month. We're going to get into the Power BI solution. For folks that like to use Excel, there's also standard integration with Excel, and we can leverage the SQL Data Cube as part of Excel. And one of the things that we did is in Excel, we built out a series of dashboards for the project side of the organization and also finance. So within projects, there's reports for your labor analysis, cost analysis, burn rate report. So there's no rekeying of any of this information. The information is being pulled from the accounting system, the time entry system, and made available via Excel. So this one is the spend report. It's showing me top line revenue, all of my operating expenses, including my indirects, net income or loss, and also what was spent. And if I look at any of these cells, when I click on it, that spent value is equal to, it says, cube value, job cube. So I didn't key anything in. It's just looking at that cube at a measure called total spent, filtered by, these filters or slicers that I have here. So really delivering information to people, in this case in a format that they're familiar with, in this case Excel. And then over to the right, I've got information about the trend of that burn rate. So every month, how much of the funding got used. And then underneath that, it's showing me, based on that trend of funding being used, how many months of funding do we have left. So something that PMs are always trying to figure out. If I continue at the same run rate, do I have enough funding? Do I need to use more funding so I don't leave money on the table? Giving you a little predictive analysis there. The GL detail, this is really a cost detail. So it's showing me all my cost elements by the projects and tasks that I selected. And then labor detail is showing me hours trended over time across whatever slicers that I select. In addition to the project side, there's also a set of financial views. So everything from a business overview to a balance sheet with key metrics here over to the right. Income statement, cash flow, a couple different indirect rate trend views. This is showing me a trend of my rates over time, where they're running provisional compared to actual. In addition to these canned views, one of the things that you can also do is you can actually use it as a way to query that cube of data. So I'm on a blank sheet here, and now it's showing me information that I can analyze. So job budget data, job ledger entries, those are like my historical job information. So if I wanted to see billings data, I can just drag and drop that in. If I wanted to see hours, maybe I want to see also detail about labor cost. We'll put those measures in there. And then we'll continue down. I talked earlier about unposted hours. Those would be timesheet hours. Unposted spent, this would be like my planned bill amounts that are in a timesheet. So if you've got T&M work, it's showing me what we could bill. And then in the rows would be, how do I want to group things? So maybe I want to look at things, we talked earlier about contracts. So let's go ahead and group this by contract. So I'm going to find the contract description, and we'll drop that in there. So here are my different contracts. Actually, before we were looking at contract number too. Let's put the number. Actually, let's put the number and name in there so we can work off that same contract we talked about. So, you know, this one right here, that W9 contract. And then we can also set filters. So if you remembered earlier, we were looking at how much was T&M versus cost plus on these ones. So if I drop in here, job type is a filter, I can then say, you know what, I want to look at just my T&M work. So I'm going to set that filter on T&M. So here are my contract vehicles, information about billings, labor hours, cost, etc. And I'm showing it by contract vehicle. Well, in addition to contract vehicle, I could put measures underneath that. So maybe I want to actually know who are the PMs underneath those. You know, so here are the folks that are managing contracts underneath those vehicles. And as I look at unposted hours, I could see that, you know, right here, Sam Adams, he's got 802 hours on projects that he's managing and 14,000 of billings. But it looks like Kevin's got 122,000 of projected billings. That's that unposted spent. I can actually drill into that. Maybe I want to know more about that work that Kevin's managing. And let's look at what are the labor categories that are planned to be billed that are on timesheets. Let's go ahead and drill to that, and you can see that, you know, consultant, developer, PM. I can see the hours that have been entered into a timesheet, how much we can bill, and this one is the one that I'm focused on. I got $84,000 of PM time, and I want to know who are the people that are working under those labor categories. I can continue to drill into that. Let's look at the actual people that have entered that time. So we're going to look at any of these fields. I'm going to look for the name, and we'll go ahead and drill to that. And now we can quickly see that, you know, Andrew's got 220 hours and $52,000 of planned billings. So I went from that high-level view, drilling all the way down to the people that are actually entering time, and we're going to plan to bill. All right, so those are some general overview things. Now I want to talk a little bit about how I set up different kinds of projects, and we'll collect a little bit of time. But since I showed a little bit about, you know, how I can interface with Excel, and I'm going to talk in a minute about SharePoint and Excel. Do we have a poll?
Yeah, we have a poll on Microsoft products
that
companies are familiar with or use quite efficiently. So, and as you were going over the Excel point, I certainly wanted to I was thinking about the same thing. So, again, just Microsoft products that your company uses most often: Office 365, Outlook, SharePoint, Excel. These are very common ones. And it looks like it's coming up quite a bit. Obviously, a lot of folks on Excel and Outlook. Office 365 coming up in third here.
All right, Office 365 is coming on now.
It's coming up there, yeah.
We got over 10%. But we know there's a lot of companies that are moving towards Office 365. And the other thing to note is that Office 365 is, you know, a major investment focus for Microsoft. All right. We've got 98%.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and close.
So it looks like just a couple people didn't. All right. So, you know, it looks like Excel is probably the most widely used as a primary product, with 60% than Outlook than Office 365. Yeah. All right. So we're going to kind of get into the meat of things. That was kind of like a general overview. Now we'll start to talk more about specifics on setting up projects and some of the details regarding that. So what you're looking at now is, you know, earlier we pulled up the job screen, and on that job screen we first talked about the status box. You know, so the status box was information about the job. To the left is everything about setting up the job. So I've got general information. This is my internal job number, which again equates typically to a delivery order or task order. I've got my client. So anytime you see this little caret down, it means it's looking into a list. So here's the list of all my customers, and now I pick the customer we're doing the work for. If I needed to add a new customer, I just hit the new button. It actually pops up the customer card. I can enter it on the fly. So little things that make it easier from a usability perspective. Who is the main contact? So the system also has contact management built into it. So I've got these 3 contacts at the client. I could also add a new one if I wanted, edit a contact, create an interaction with that contact. Who is my internal PM? So the reason why we do some of that reporting earlier is, how did we know who the PM was on the job? Well, we assigned the PM here. So now that also flows through to any of the reporting. What type of contract, overall period of performance, information about do we allow time in advance. So on certain projects, you can allow time in advance like PTO, but on direct projects, you're not supposed to. So configuration option as a user. I hit show more fields, and now it just opened up some additional fields. So earlier, I showed from a list that ability to hide columns. On data entry screens, you can hide fields. So in this case, I hit a field for identifying that this was an FCA contract. So for clients that have FCA work, they love the fact that we've got capabilities to handle some of it. And in fact, I met with a company yesterday that provides services and solutions to companies that focus on FCA work. So a partner of ours, Jim Campbell, really we're developing an exciting partnership with them. So for companies that have FCA work, that's going to be an area that we're going to have even additional capabilities. But if your business doesn't get involved in FCA work, you don't even want to show it, right? So now I can click that show fewer fields, and as a user, it's automatically hidden for me. If I go to the posting tab, this is information about financial elements of setting up the project. So everything from what department owns this work to these job groups and the job account groups, it tells the system what type of expenses are valid. So if I go to job account group, you can set up a standard group, and this can tell the system things like you can have a project that's a direct project, but there is no travel that's allowed. So what it does is whenever anyone enters an expense report, or if you enter any kind of purchase order, it won't allow them to see certain types of expense codes or certain type of labor categories. So really helps with controls to make sure that people only see what they should be seeing. Revenue and billing formulas, so I won't go through these in detail, but there are many different standard ones. But in addition to the standard ones, obviously everything related to T&M, fixed price, and all cost type contracts. But you also have the ability to add your own formulas if needed. So for clients that have really complex billing and revenue formulas, the system has some out-of-the-box configuration available to you. In this case, I'm on a cost-plus fixed fee contract, so the concept of billing pool group comes into play. So the billing pool group is related to your indirects. So this is in regards to, from an indirect perspective, how much you can recover. So we're going to talk later about cost pools and provisional rates. This is telling the system, as it relates to indirect recovery, is it based on our corporate rate structure? So we've got one called company pool. I've also got examples saying, all right, we apply G&A to travel across all projects, but on this project, I can't recover any of my G&A. So I can't apply G&A to travel from a recovery perspective. So you have the flexibility to recover and bill differently than how you allocate. And then in terms of fee percent, you can identify how the fee gets applied across any element of expense. As a company, you decide, you set those controls, you can use them across any project at that point. Also, fee amount, this is fee on hours or any type of withholding. Then on the contracts tab, if you remembered earlier, we touched on the contract number. So this goes to an actual contract card itself. On this contract card, you would see all the details about that particular contract vehicle. So information about the contracting office, the period of performance of that, if there's anything related to IFF there. If it's product related, you could have items that you sell. If it's project related, you would have your pricing. So these would be your T&M bill rate on this vehicle. So if you have a GSA contract and you've got your predefined GSA labor rates, you can have all those built in the system and then use them anytime you sell something against the GSA contract. I can use the GSA pricing. I'm going to talk about T&M in just a minute. So now we've got the main job set up, and then beneath that, I mentioned this term called WBS, or work breakdown structure. So this is where I'm defining, in essence, that work package. So I'm telling the system, in this example, the depth of it. So you can see that I've got a multi-level structure. It's a 60-character alphanumeric field, so just like Microsoft Project, in that you define that structure, how you separate it, and then for each project you build the structure. So I could have some projects that are 2-level, 3-level, 5-level, 10-level WBS structure. Within this WBS, a couple things that we're tracking. We're tracking information about acronyms and CLINs from a funding perspective. You can see the overall contract and funded value. This number here is made up of potentially one or multiple funding mods. So if I hit that number, it shows me all the history of all the mods against that contract. So the period when that mod happened, contract change, funding change, anything related to the funded fee, and then you can also track multiple versions of that in case there was a change to it. This number here, when you want to create that mod, actually let's just go in and create one so people can see how it's done, because I think it's pretty straightforward. I just select the new line, give it a description, so we'll say mod number 37. If I hit T, it would put today's date in, or I can just use this calendar. So I can go back and say, okay, this mod came in on June 30th, and it was an additional, we'll say $450,000, all fully funded, no impact on the fee. We say okay, and now what's going to happen is once I accept this change, you'll see that this amount gets updated, then also on the overall job. So just go ahead and say okay here. You can see it went to 21.8 and 21.6, and now when I go back to that WBS, you can see that that went over $8 million there. So you're tracking, entering that detailed mod. The system is going to provide that roll up to the task, subtask, and then the overall job. In addition to managing changes to contract and funding, you can also have a mod that could be for the POP, or maybe the contracting officer changes. So you can use that mod detail screen for any of those kind of changes. This is one of the places where SharePoint comes into play. So for folks that use SharePoint, it also has document management capabilities built into it. So if I wanted to, I don't have email open, but if I had an email, I could drag and drop it. If I had, in this case, a PDF file, I can drag and drop it. And what it does is it will take that document, place it into SharePoint, and in essence link it back to this page. So just think, if you're managing files somewhere else and you want to get to the original contract document, or there's a question about a funding mod, you've got to go to either some SharePoint site that you've got to search for, or you got to go to a file directory. I can just go right to this page and I can see any documents related to job 1002. So it kind of neatly packages everything together. If you don't use SharePoint, that's okay. You can also use this link function, and it operates in a similar fashion. It's just an extra step where instead of being a drag and drop, I need to go in here and actually tell the system I want to create a new link, and I go out and actually link the document back to here. Where with the SharePoint integration, it's just drag it, drop it in. I think that's the way everybody thinks drag and drop today versus typing anything, and we're kind of spoiled in that way. and Microsoft's making it where you can do that drag and drop also on Dynamics NAV, and at that point integrated with SharePoint. All right, so a couple other things about this WBS. We talked about the contract and funded value. I guess the last thing about contract and funded value is you can set it at any level of WBS. So I could set it at level 1 here, and if I did, that would mean that any task underneath 001 could use that funding. And then I'm telling the system visible on timesheet or expense report. So the time and expense system, all works off the same database. So you're all in one database. And once I select this box, it automatically updates the time entry system to know that this charge code 001-01 labor for job 1002 is only valid for timesheets. Who can see it is this membership. So this is telling me who can see the charge code. Either they can see it for the entire period of performance of the task, or you can restrict it for just one person. And then approval hierarchy is just telling the system how does that get approved. So you can set approval hierarchies. You can have unlimited levels of approval as part of timesheets, expense reports, or requisitions. All right, so that was a couple things about the project setup. I'm not going to go through the budgeting and forecasting as much right now, but there's a full budget management capability. I can have an unlimited number of budgets. So for each project, the individual can have a baseline budget. Maybe you got ETC budget. You reforecast every period. I was just meeting with a company yesterday that they talked a lot about how they were pushing information down to operations and PMs. Great way for them to manage that forecast and be more collaborative with finance. They can also get real-time information about the project costs, but they can budget all their direct elements. The system will calculate the indirects for them as part of that process. So that's a little bit about the job setup. I'm going to go to a T&M to talk a little bit about how T&Ms are a little bit different. So I won't go through any of the other setups, but I do want to touch on, with a T&M, I'm not billing it based on cost. I'm billing it based on predefined labor rates. We mentioned earlier this idea that if I had a contract associated with it, so I've got this, in this case it's a GSA contract, this W-9 one, I could actually take all of my GSA pricing and copy it into this particular job. What would happen is that GSA price would then come into my job setup, and now it's specific to this job. So now it's saying for job 2025, by labor category code and effective date, here's the bill rate. So the system's going to handle that multi-year T&M bill rate. And then my resource labor category code, this is telling the system based on the people that are working, what labor category code on this job are they working under. So if I filter over here, let's filter on senior consultant. Go ahead and filter to that. So here are the 4 folks that are on that senior consultant labor category code. And then if I go over to the right here, let's go ahead and we'll find that same one. And we're going to go ahead and filter to senior consultant here. So right now, and this effective date can be any day of the year or any day of the month. So it doesn't need to be the 1st of the year. It could be the 10th of March is when the rates change, any day. So this is saying that right now, this labor category code would be billing at $2.20 an hour. Well, maybe these are our standard GSA rates, and we're going to offer this client, because we really want this business, we want to give them a discount off of it. So one of the things I'm going to show you is how can I use Excel as a tool to help manage the system. So you couldn't see it, but I just hit Control-E, and what Control-E does is it takes data from the system and sends it to Excel. So if I go over to Excel, you'll see that there's a sheet over here that says today at 12:49 we just sent this information off. And let's just take these labor rates and we're going to copy them over here. And maybe what we're going to say is starting in 2017, we're going to give the client 5% off our standard GSA rates. So I'm going to just say this is times 0.95, and now that's our new bill rate that we're going to offer. And I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to format. I'm going to format it here. And then what I'm going to do is, let's go ahead and from 2017 on, I'm going to take that out of NAV. So we're just going to go in here and we'll remove these future bill rates. And then I'm just going to go back into Excel. And let's just go ahead and copy these. So I'm actually doing offline some updates, but I'm putting it right back into the system. So questions that might come up is, okay, what if I did something in Excel that broke the rules of, the system? The system validates every one of those entries, even if I paste it in. So if I did something in Excel where, maybe the unit price, instead of putting a number, I put a letter in there, it would error out just like I was typing it in. All right, so that's a little bit about how I can interact with Excel. So anytime you're in a list or a ledger, I can export and also import back from Excel. We talked about budgeting. One quick thing on funding limits. Funding limits, when I set that initial funding limit, that creates these initial caps, but I can cap any type of entry. So I can come in here and I can say that for option year 1, maybe I want to cap labor, burdens, fee, whatever it might be. And if I cap labor, I can come in and this category group name, this would be saying, all right, I'm going to cap direct labor, and it's that the accounting clerk labor category code or a certain resource, we can only bill so much. So you might have a cap on that. So the system allows you to create caps on any of those cost elements. Other thing the system has is this ability to set alerts. And alerts are what can tell the system. People often ask about limitation of funds clause. We need to notify the government 60 days prior, to when we hit 75% of funding used. Well, earlier we showed you that spend report that gave you that little predictive analytics. This allows me at any level of the WBS to compare the spent or billed value to funded or budgeted, and at any percent I identify, send an alert to the PM, the task manager, or I can just key an email address in here. Why this is important is the spent amount, instead of this being, so billed means you posted the invoice, spent means you've, in essence, incurred that cost that can be billed. So this happens even before you generate the invoice. So the system is starting to do some things that, in the past you're always struggling with. You can't get information until 6 weeks after, the time that someone enters the timesheet, because sometimes they enter it in the first week of the month. By the time we close the month, it's too late to make changes. This is giving you information farther in advance. All right, so we showed you how you enter some of the data from a setup perspective. Now we're going to show you a little bit on the timesheet side, and then we'll cover any questions. We'll touch on billing real quick too. So on the timesheet side, this is the place that all employees are going to go to enter time. So a couple different things to note. The timesheet period can be any period. What you're going to do is, let's go ahead and just create a new timesheet here. I'm just going to go ahead and open one up for the week of the 18th. Is that this week? Okay, this was last week. All right, so what I would do is, you can see it drop some lines in there. The reason why it did is because I had favorites identified. The favorites are the ones that I've got a list of jobs that are assigned to me. I can only see the ones assigned to me. Then favorites are, here's the ones that I really work on every period. I can create those. And then I just go to the day that I worked, enter my time. If I want to enter a comment, I can enter that here, say OK, save it. That's what I do on a daily basis. The system also has controls in place for things like I can't enter time in advance, Or maybe I changed something. It shouldn't have been 8 hours. This really should have been 4 hours. So I can actually track that change log, and it tracks it in 2 different fields. So if the government comes in to do a timesheet audit, I can have these comments that are for internal purposes not show up on that report, but I could show to the government that audit trail that, this was originally 8, it was changed to 4. The reason was X, whatever that person typed in there. They can also look up their PTO balance, or they can request time off. This workflow, triggers email to the person's approver of PTO, and then if they approve it, it goes onto their timesheet. If they reject it, they get an email of why. System also supports timesheet corrections. Expense reports. So we'll just touch on a couple things with expense reports, and then we'll go inside the system real quick to close things up. So with expense reports, same idea with favorites. To create an expense report, why don't we just do one? We'll just see how easy and quick it is. So we'll just say I traveled from the 18th to the 22nd and traveled to see a client. Click Save. Now it creates my expense header for me. From here, if the travel is based on per diem, I would choose where I traveled to. So we'll go ahead and say that we went to Alabama. Choose the destination. I can type it in, or I can just choose from the drop-down box. How long was I at this location? So we'll just say the trip was just that one location the whole time. I'm going to go ahead and choose the project, choose that WBS code, identify what the code was for, in this case, our lodging. So we'll just go ahead and type in lodging, and then for meals, we'll do that based on per diem. Click Next, and it shows me my grid, and then I'm just going to enter the actual amount for the room tax, click Finish, and now I just create an expense report, including that 75% first day and last day as part of the process. If I had any type of receipts, I would just go ahead and open up my attachment screen, and I can drag and drop a receipt in there. But I entered it that quick, and then my last step would just be save it, submit it, and now it goes off to my approver. So as I was entering that, what you'll see is when I come back into the system, that expense report will go down to the bottom. Whoops. Try to go down to the bottom. Here's the one that I just created, and you'd see all the details of it right here, including if I go to the approval list, it'll show who is supposed to approve it and when they got notified. So obviously there's lots of stuff to cover. The last thing I'm going to cover, and then we'll have time for maybe 2 questions, Damon, is just how I generate invoices. And the process is you just run the function to create an invoice. Also can do invoices based on final rate. It creates an invoice proposal, which is like a pre-invoice. And this is where somebody can review it, make sure it's accurate. And then finally, when you post it, it becomes a posted invoice, and you can see you can reprint it as many times as you like, including when I could email it, print it, and the other thing is I can print it on the 1034, 1035, which would be the public voucher. So, really giving you the flexibility to print the way you want to see it, or print it on government formats. And then I guess the last thing that we'll close it out with, I won't go through the indirect rate setup, but the system supports flexible rates. We haven't run across a client that had a rate structure the system couldn't support. We've got clients that have 50+ pools. We have clients that have 1 or 2 pools. So really gives you a lot of flexibility there. So lots of questions on here.
Yeah, we're definitely close on time.
All right,
I'll let you pick a few questions out, and we'll get to those. Then the ones we can't get, we will have to come back.
Yeah. Well, another thing we can do is because the system has lots of capabilities built into it, we can have a one-on-one presentation for you, or I know we've got, for folks that are in the DC metro area, I know that there's a lot of folks all over the country on the webinar today, but for folks in the DC metro area, we've got an in-person event coming up on
September 15th.
September 15th.
Yep. And Tyson.
Okay.
I'll have that up on the website today.
All right. That sounds great. All right. So I'll just cover 2 questions real quick. So first question I always cover, always gets asked is related to cost. And really, when it comes to the cost of the software and implementation, it's a hard one to answer. But what I'll say is that the system can be acquired if you're in a subscription model, for as little as probably $1,200 to $1,500 a month, something like that on the lower end. If you're buying the software in a purchase, which we'll call a perpetual license, which means you own it, that can be done for as little as about $35K. Up to, depending on how big the company is, we've got clients that have, because it's based on concurrent user versus based on employee headcount, it can vary pretty drastically. But there was a couple of folks that asked about pricing. We're happy to follow up with you and get details on that for you. All right, the second question came in here regarding migration of legacy data. Do you have a way for us to migrate our data? And the answer is yes. On those we drop it into Excel with you, and similar on the QuickBooks side. So that'll cover you related to migration of legacy data. And for the couple folks that asked about that, we're happy to kind of share with you some examples on how to do that. Well, I don't want to go too far. I know we're a couple minutes over, but we just want to, one, thank you for your time, and we appreciate the opportunity to present. If you've got further questions, we will follow up with you and happy to answer any of those.
Contact us as well if there's something that you'd like to see.
All right. Well,
thanks for joining us today. Wish you a wonderful rest of your day and rest of the week, and hopefully we'll talk soon.
Thank you.